Adamson. I'm visiting professor.
All right. Whenever you're ready.
Okay. All right. Now, I guess I can just leave that scanning and stuff. And so what I normally do is I walk in. Okay. So you don't have to follow me as I walk in. You can just have it on the board so you can see this right here. Okay. And then you go ahead and start. And I'll say, hello, and welcome again to the HTML5 Lecture Series at SNHU. I'm Tom Adamson, and the visiting professor. And this one is number 5, lecture number 5, on web document secrets. We're going to learn about the secrets of web documents. And look, I brought a new hat. Tell me if you like it. What do you think? Not bad, huh? Pretty good? Okay, we'll give it a shot, and we'll have comments, of course, on YouTube for folks to tell me what they like. All right, web document secrets. What are web documents? If we're going to know about HTML5, we have to know what a web document is and how it relates to things. So let's have some basic foundations. So we're going to start with something we all know about. We're going to start with this dude here. And this dude here, we all know who he is. He's the one that looks at the computer screen. There's the computer right here. He's looking at the screen. He's all happy. Okay. Who is he? He is the user. So in order to understand some of the secrets of web documents, we have to start with the person that we're trying to get information to, which is the user. Now, what happens here is that there's some code that is coming to his computer because he's looking at something on the web. There's some code that's coming to his computer, and we're going to put here like a document, and it's got code on it. See, it says code, so it has to have code on it. Code. And then there's even more code. Okay. And this right here is coming from, and I'm going to draw it as a cloud, like this. It's coming from the internet. And somewhere on the internet, there's a big computer up there that's called a server. And this is where this keeps the web documents. So there's a web document, which is just code, and it's also content, but we'll talk about the difference. And it's coming from the internet. It's going down here, and it's coming to his computer. So since this is called the server, right here where the code is kept, this right here is called the client. The client is the computer that the user is using. And then what the user sees, you remember my notes, right? Okay, very academic. Okay, and what the user sees is a web page. So this right here is the document. Now let's see what the web document does. This thing right here. Okay, the web document is nothing more than a text file. It is a text file. In other words, all it contains is text, just like this is text here. That's what it contains, nothing else, nothing magical. Okay, and it has code to tell the browser what the user will see. So what is the web document? It is a text file, has code that tells the browser what the user will see. And where's the browser? The browser's right in here. This has been the browser. Is installed on the client. So what is a web document? A web document is what comes from a server that has code on it that comes into the browser, and it tells the browser what the user will see, and what the user will see is called a web page. So like, for example, can you see this big screen right here? I'm the user. I'm looking at this, and what I see while it's scanning my laptop for virus, I see a web page. What's behind here? Behind here, yep, there's a web document here. I can see the code. Well, no, I really can't, but we can look at what's behind there. It's a web document telling the browser that's installed in here what this thing will display. Okay, so you got the idea of how this all sits together. Okay. Oh, boy. This doesn't erase too good. Oh, my goodness. Well, we'll have to live with it. It's still a bit damp. Nice effect, huh? So the sequence that we have here, we have the server, we have which sends stuff to the client. The client gets the web document. Which goes to the browser, telling it what the web page will look like for the end user. That's the sequence of what happens when you're doing HTML stuff, when you're doing stuff on the web. It comes from the server, goes to the client. It comes as a web document. The web document tells the browser how to display the web page, and that's what the end user sees. So what we should do is really define these terms, because we're going to be using these terms to try and explain the other stuff that happens in HTML5, which of course is going to revolutionize the world. You should try and make a table like this. Here's the term server. And then right here, what we're going to have is, what is it? So what's the server? That's where web documents are stored. Okay, so the server is where web documents are stored. Keep in mind, a web document, nothing more than a text file that has code on it. All right, so now we have the server. So what is the client? The client is the device used to display the web page to the user. Could be a cell phone, could be an iPad, your pad, my pad, his pad, that pad. And then we have the document. And the document is a text file that has code for the browser. So the document is a text file that has code for the browser. So now we go here, and what's the browser? That converts the document code to a web page. And we're going to need a little bit more room here, but we see what the server is, we see what the client is, we see what a document is, we see what a browser is, and the last term that we're going to be using here is the web page. And this is, what is it? Web page. And this is what the browser shows to the client, to the end user. Okay, so if someone says to you, okay, what's the server? You should know what a server is. If they say, okay, what's the client? You should know what the client is. What's an end user? What's a web document? What is a browser? And what's a web page? You think, that's pretty simple. Okay, well, that's what this stuff is here. All right, so what we're going to talk about next, let me look at my notes, see what we're going to talk about. Oh, yeah, we're going to talk about what these things do, how they interact with each other, okay? So let's see if I have better luck on erasing this dude here from last time. Wish you had one of these electronic boards. You just push a button and zappo, it's done, right? All right, what I want to do here is I want to look at a web document. And the web document I'm going to envision as a person that's given instructions to me. And here's the person right here, and the person that's talking to me, they're going blah, 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 blah. There's their nose. Here's their hair here. And they got a little ear right here. And they got like a megaphone, okay? Like one of these giant megaphones right here. And here's the handle, and they're holding on to the megaphone like this. And they're giving instructions, blah, 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 okay? And they're shouting, okay? And even more blah, okay? And this person right here, this person is representing the web document. He's shouting instructions to somebody. Let's see what he's doing. So this is the web document. And what we've got here, this is the browser. Here's the browser right in here. And we got inside the browser, there's this person here that's trying to listen to what the web document's telling him. And he's saying, whoa, he's saying, oh, okay, I'll do that. And he's saying, cool. And while he's got his ear here, and he's listening to all this stuff, and what he's doing while he's listening to it, he's here, and he's creating what he should be doing on this is going to be now the web page. And of course, this being the web page, this is what the end user sees. This right here is the end user. So it's the job of the browser to listen to the instructions from the web document and then listening to those instructions, follow those instructions to create the web page that the end user sees. And hopefully by now you got the idea of the relationship between a web document and a browser and an end user. Okay? Now, here's something that's really, really super important. Okay? I'm erasing better now, right? Okay. Mm-hmm. Web document, the browser, and the web page. And the end user. Okay? And of course, where did this guy come from? The document, he came from the server up on the internet. Oh, that's not erasing very good at all. That's okay, we're getting there. Now, you may know this, but just to make sure that you know it, just to make sure that we're all on the same page, let's talk about the code that's used in the web document. The instructions, right? The code used in a web document is called, what do you think it's called? This is what it's called. This is the name of the code. It's called HTML. And as we know, it stands for hypertext capital T, HT, and then the M for markup, and then the L for language. So HTML stands for hypertext markup language. And there's some important things that we have to say about this. The first thing that we have to say, number one important thing, number one right here, number one important thing, this is not a programming language. Many people will say, I'll ask people sometimes, I'll ask students, have you had any programming? They'll say, yeah, I've done HTML. Well, HTML is not a programming language. You know what it is? I'll tell you what it is. It is a markup language. You say, well, what's the difference between a programming language and a markup language? I'll show you. Okay? It's not a programming language. So if someone says, well, have you done any programming? And you say, yeah, in HTML, they know that you're missing something there. Okay. The point is, if you can code HTML, you are not a programmer. What would you be? I guess you'd be a markupper or something like that. Okay, so remember, if someone comes along and says, it's important that we make this distinction because part of what happens in the HTML5 specification is we're going to be using a programming language that's called JavaScript. And we're also going to be using a markup language called HTML. So we've got to make the distinction between what the two things are. So if somebody comes up to you and says, can you program? And usually people that will come up and ask you that probably look like something like this. Probably have a shirt on like that. So he's asking this dude, can you program? And the correct answer would be no, but I can write markup. And of course, the person that would answer that, answering it truthfully, and he would probably look like this person here, with an ear here, and there's his answer, and he's given his answer truthfully, and of course we have to make the word cloud to show that. So here's the person asking, can you program? He says no. Oh, wait, we have to make, yeah, like they're talking to each other. Okay, now they're talking to each other. Can you program? He says no, but I can markup. What are some of the programming languages? Well, and what are some of the markup languages? Well, one of the important programming languages, matter of fact, right now the most widely used programming language in the whole wide world is JavaScript. Another programming language is Java. Java and JavaScript are not the same language. There is C, there is C++, there is C#, there is Python, and the list goes on. Now, the thing about these programming languages is they are relatively new. You know, 100 years ago, they didn't have these. Matter of fact, yeah, when I was a little kid, they didn't have these. Markup languages. One of the markup languages is HTML. This is new, relatively new. However, there's other markup languages that are hundreds of years old. You might say, what? Markup languages, hundreds of years old? Yeah. The concept of markup has been around for hundreds of years, ever since the Gutenberg printing press. So what we see here is that markup is not programming, because if markup languages are hundreds of years old, that means the people that used them had to be programmers. But there was no such thing hundreds of years ago as programming. These things didn't even exist. So it's important we make the distinction. We understand what's going on under the hood here. All right. Well, we're getting some special effects on the erasing here. Sort of cool, I guess. Here's how markup languages started. And it's good as potential professionals that we know this. This is back hundreds of years ago. And this right here is this is going to be a printing press, an old type printing press. And here's the top plate that contained all the stuff, and here's the paper here that's going to be printed on. Here's the bottom plate, and the bottom plate contained all of the text setting, and then it was on a thing like this, and then you had the pressman guy here, okay, and he would be operating this thing here. Of course, they all had longer hair way back in those days around Gutenberg's time, and that was acceptable. And he's sort of happy that he's doing that, and he's turning the press thing here. Okay, and he's making a page. This right here, this one here, this contains the stuff that's going to be, that has the typesetting on it that's going to make the page for the book. And so there he is doing his thing. And so this was the old printing press. You might say, what does this have to do with markup? Bear with me, I'll show you. Before you could print on this bottom table had type that had to be set. It was usually set in metal. So you had a guy that worked inside the print shop, and this is the table that he worked on, and there he is. He had a hat, okay, and he had a candle because they didn't have electricity then, and he was the typesetter. And so he would sit there, work away, setting the type. And we'll put him on a chair. Here's the chair, make him sort of comfortable. And this was the typesetter. And he would set the type that would be used to form the page to make the book. And then, of course, one of the most important people in it was the writer. So the writer, we had to make him look sort of like a distinguished writer. And there he is. He's doing his writing. And he's probably thinking a little bit and what have you. But what's he using to write with? What he's using to write with is a quill pen. And there he is writing his manuscript, and he's writing it on parchment. And he's going to give that parchment to the typesetter, and the typesetter is going to lay it all out and everything so that the final page looks like it's part of a book. And here's what he's writing. Let's say that this is his handwriting. This is my great story, because they didn't have typewriters, right? And I have my doggy Shadow, that's the name of my doggy, sitting by my side as I write this. Okay, so when they first started doing this, he would write all this out in this fancy dude handwriting, and then he'd give it to the typesetter. The typesetter would go ahead and do his thing, reading the manuscript, and then give it to the printer. The printer would print it, and then finally what would come out? A page. Not a web page, but a page. And it would be a nice print. This is my story, yada, 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 yada. Then the author, the writer, like the server, the writer would look at it and say, wait a minute, I didn't want this in large caps. I didn't mean for it to be in large capital letters. I wanted this to be in a smaller font, and I wanted it to be centered. And also, wait a minute, I didn't want my dog's name Shadow lowercase. Why was it made lowercase? And the other thing is, I wanted a paragraph here. And the typesetter said, but I didn't know that. And this was a problem that they had when they first came out with the printing press hundreds of years ago. So these guys agreed that what they were going to do, they were going to, when this writer finished with his manuscript, he would sit down with the typesetter, and they would put information on the manuscript as to how the final page was to look. And the information they used was symbols, such as symbol that looked like this. That symbol, if they put a symbol like that right here, that meant this was a new paragraph. If they put a symbol like this under a word, a letter, that meant that letter was to be capitalized. And all these symbols that they had, they would mark this up. Mark it up. Where did we hear that before? HTML. Markup. Oh, they were marking up this document using symbols. Oh, you mean code? Yeah. In order to tell the typesetter what the final page would look like. Holy mackerel! They were doing this web stuff way back then and didn't know it. Is that right? So what is the stuff that markup is doing? Markup simply tells the typesetter, which now is the web browser, what the final page is going to look like. And you know what in the final page? You don't see any markup, right? You don't see any markup at all. And the same thing is true. The same thing is true today with the web browser, as we'll see. For some reason, I am off the line here. Okay, let me just get back on here. Okay, all right. We're still going. Okay. All right, so now where's my eraser? Okay, so you got the idea of what markup is. Markup is simply symbols that tells the typesetter what the final page is going to look like. The symbols, the markup symbols, are never shown on the final document. HTML, the markup language, the information comes from the web document, and then the browser interprets that with the markup symbols, and then the final HTML page, web page comes out, formatted the way it's supposed to be without the markup symbols. So if somebody says, how long have you been doing markup? You could say, if you're 110 years old, you can say, since I was 10, last 100 years. They said that's impossible. They didn't have computers back then. And you'd say they didn't need computers because markup languages have been around for hundreds and hundreds of years. They're not new. Okay. So, here's what we're going to talk about. What is a tag? What is a tag? You might say, well, what does this have to do with markup? Well, let me explain something. Have you ever played tag? When you were a kid, you say, oh, you're it, or oh, I'm it. Okay, so tag means that you've identified something. Like, for example, if you're playing tag, you identify something, right? You identify something. And so here's this guy, and he's running along, and he's smiling, and he's racing. Okay. He's coming after you. And he says, you're it. Right? And then this guy here who's been trying to run away, now he's surprised. He's got a big question mark here. And he's been trying to run away, but he's been tagged. He says, I've been tagged. And then people that are watching this, of course, they're standing around watching it and what have you. Here's people standing around watching it. Person has been tagged. They'll say, he's it. He's been tagged. And of course, both of them would say that, right? Like that. So a tag, when you're tagged, it's some way of identifying something. And that's what a tag is. And that's what we're going to be talking about. And also, you can be untagged. So what I'd like to do here is show you something. And I hope this works. I'm going to minimize this screen here and just sort of bear with me. What I've got here is I've got a document that's in rich text format. It says rich text format document, okay? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to open this document. Just open it. Okay? Here it should be opening. Come on. Come on, Microsoft, you can do it, man. I know you can handle this. It's a big chore, but you can handle it. Okay, here it comes. Here it comes. Okay. What it says here, this is my really cool stuff. And notice the is in bold. What I'm going to do is unbold the is. I'm just going to do a Control B. Okay? Whoops, I made both of them bold. Let me do a Control B again. Okay? Now, the only thing that's in bold now is my, M-Y. All right, so let's remember that. That's the only thing that's in bold. Okay? Notice what's in italics. Cool, spelled with a K. When cool is spelled with a K, that means it's super cool. That means it's nuclear cool. So what we have to remember is that the word MY is in bold and the word cool is in italics. Okay? And of course, we're going to save this guy. We're going to save right here. Now what we're going to do, we're going to open this in a simple text editor to see how that document knew what was bold and what was to be italics. So I'm going to right-click on it, and I'm going to open with, I'm going to open it with Notepad. Notepad's a simple text editor. And let's see what it looks like. Aha! Look at this. Look at this. Let's look at my. Do you see my right here? What do you see before the word my? You see a tag, don't you? A /B. See the /B right here? There's the /B. What do you suppose that is? That's a tag. That's a tag that tells it, you've been tagged, buddy, and what you got here, you're going to be bold. Here's a /B with a 0. What do you suppose this means? This means you're untagged. No more bold. Oh. So this is the markup. You say, but I didn't see this in the document. Of course you didn't. That's how markup works. Markup just tags something and tells it what to do. Look at this. Really cool. Wasn't cool italics? So what did it start with? A \I for italics. And then it says, okay, you've been tagged as italics. Now you see a \I 0 to say you're untagged. And what do you suppose that markup is? \par means we're going to start a new paragraph. And what is all this stuff right here? All this stuff right here is information that tells the document what kind of markup this is using. This is a header because you don't see any of this in your document. And web pages, web documents, they have headers too, and they also have markup. Their tags look a little bit different, but that's the idea. So when you're using a word processor, making things bold, changing the font size and all this and that, what are you doing, man? You're using markup.